Okay, we're gonna get started. First, I have some announcements. This is class 2. Thank you all for coming. Next week, class 3 for fuzzing. It's on. Now you're gonna make me start it again, but no, I'll just cut it till after the announcements. So for class 3, we're going to have one of the students speaking for me because I will be at collegiate cyber defense competition, wreaking havoc upon poor college students' lives. But class will meet as usual. It'll be a hands-on class. You'll be learning how to make fuzzers. And the week after that is the exploit development class, my favorite class. That week we're actually not gonna have a Thursday meeting. That shouldn't affect you guys unless you were planning on coming in on Thursday. So that meeting will be as usual on Saturday. And we'll have, that's the week, Chris Gates is coming in that week as a guest speaker. He does some metasploit development. He's one of the developers. He's gonna show us some auxiliary modules he made for Oracle. And then the week after that, everything will go back to normal, Thursdays and Saturdays, but Rob Fuller is coming in that week. I'll send you an email with all the dates. I should have written them all down. Also, I spoke to H.D. Moore and Patty Wright from Rapid7, and not only are they letting us show Metasploit Pro here in class, but they gave us an unreleased beta version that we'll be able to see in class. So one week that we don't have a guest speaker, that's what we'll show. So should be something special. And then I know Rob is coming on the Thursday, so it just depends on what the speaker wants, which day they come in. And today we're going to talk about, for our guest speaking, we're going to talk about buffer overflows and basic exploitation things, kind of a better version of what I tried to do last week. So this is Metasploit Unleashed at Reverse Space. Thanks for coming out. This may be the most boring one we ever do because it's information gathering and vulnerability scanning, which is a necessary evil if you're gonna do exploitation. If I come into a pen test and I'm like, so I'm just gonna throw exploits at everything. It's gonna be loud, it's gonna take stuff down, and you're probably not gonna get that many shells where you might have otherwise. Did I just see that go down? No. Okay, so, question? Right. The wireless access point is Metasploit, and it's open, and that just puts you can talk to me, and also the internet, which is why we're getting a late start. So if you just go in without any knowledge, if I go in on a pen test, I might not know anything about the network that's out there. There's all sorts of stuff out there, and if I don't know anything about it and I just set off some tool that sends out exploits, I'm just not gonna get the best results. So information gathering and vulnerability scanning are, I would say, pretty boring comparatively to getting shells and doing post-exploitation, but it's a necessary evil. Because if you do all these things, then you're gonna get better results. And again, I'm Georgia, Director of Cyber Warface here at Reverse Space. Used to be Cyber Warfare, but Darren from Hack5 decided it was gonna be Warface, and I liked it, so I'm Director of Cyber Warface. First thing, what is information gathering? Information gathering is the first thing you do when you're on an engagement to pen test. We want to learn as much as possible about our targets. There's a network out there. It could have VoIP on it. It could have lots of desktops, servers, all sorts of infrastructure. Anything that's routable, I want to know about it. So I try and figure out as much as I can about what's out there before I ever start sending out exploits. An example is open ports, running services and installed software. So I'm gonna tell this even though I'm on the feed. It's kind of a silly story, but once upon a time at my first job, one of my managers who had a CISSP and had been to SANS came up to me and asked me if I could show her where port 80 was on the back of the computer. So it's okay, if we're all laughing, then we all know that that's nonsense. So there aren't a bunch of ports that correspond to the ports on the back of the machine. Ports is, kind of an idea rather than a physical entity. A port is just kind of a network socket, a way that if it's an open port, for instance, if I browse to a website, which we are now all able to do since Richard fixed the internet, there is a web server. If I go to google.com, there's a web server running at google.com on port 80, and that's a service running on an open port. So those are the things that I can connect to. If I have my box, if I'm sitting in the bathroom and I'm connected to the network and I want to attack other boxes on the engagement, open ports are where I would go. Because since I don't have physical access, the only way for me to access the boxes is through what I can get over the network. So the open ports are very important to me. And I want to identify all the points of interest for further exploration. If ports aren't open, that's not going to help me get in. But if they are open, they might. And again, they might not. It just depends. For instance, if I know a box pings, that really doesn't tell me as much as, say, SMB is open. So I just try and figure out. This is why it's information gathering so much has to be done by people. Because the computer can't really make these decisions so much. What exactly on a specific network is going to get me from point A to point Q, R, S, T, L, M. Okay, first off, if we're going to be on an engagement, at the end of it, we have to write a report, and that sucks. And if you want to write better reports, talk to Jason, because he writes reports, really good ones. But throughout your engagement, you're going to want to take notes. There's always pencil and paper, or just writing into a notepad document. But there's a few applications out there, and we're just going to look at one. It's called Dratus, and it's already built into Backtrack for you. So this is just an example of a note-taking framework. You can import files as well. We're going to look at Nmap and Nessus and how we can import them into Dratus. We can just put in our own notes. So this is as we go through the engagement, we're able to keep track of everything we do, things we find interesting, and if we're working on a team, it's a good way to share things between people. So let's just look at that. If any of you have your cheat sheets, there are a couple of mistakes on it I found in the Thursday class, but we'll go through that as we do, and I'll send you out a new one tomorrow. But see, it just has the instructions for how to do it and more information, but let's look at how to do this in Backtrack. And luckily this time I decided I was going to write down what I was going to say. So here I am in Backtrack. All I've done so far is I've started my networking. So just a reminder, when you start up Backtrack, it doesn't automatically do your networking. Let me make this taller. Just hold it right here. So it's etc init.d networking start. But mine has already started. So if you've just started yours up, just hit enter there and it will pull up your network interfaces and do a DHCP, which will get you. You need to have it in bridged mode in your, so it'll go through your own computer, the host, and get its IP from that same router you are. So I've already done that. But then I want to go to, so change directory to our special Backtrack directory, pin test, miscellaneous, the short way, so MISC, then Dratus, then server, and script. And this is all in your cheat sheet, so if you don't remember it, it's in the slides and in your cheat sheet, so you don't have to memorize anything in my class. Then we're going to start the Dratus server. So we just say Ruby, it's a Ruby file, so Ruby and then server. If anything's going to fail, it's going to be the Dratus part. And yeah, that's what it did this morning. Let me see. Also, if you ever forget where anything is, in the menu there's Backtrack, and then you can find all of your pin testing tools here. Let me turn the Dratus server here. Why are you doing this to me, Dratus? Apparently, Dratus does not want to start this morning, or this afternoon, rather. You know, it may already be running. Let me just check and make sure it's not already up. So if you had Stratus, did anybody else try it and not get that error? Yours is working? Okay. So what you would do to access Stratus, its web interface is HTTPS, and then localhost, and then 3304. Not 3304, it's whatever it said it was. 3004. So it runs on port 3004. And sure enough, it is not running. This is how much vulnerability scanning and information gathering sucks, that I just can't get the class to work no matter how many times I go through it. This morning everything was working, and today it's just like, no, sorry. Do what?
Try moving scripts. Not root scripts.
What? Yeah, not root scripts, you're right.
Just do it on Webbox, window 32.
Yeah. Let's see if it works one more time. Script and then server. There it goes. Okay. So in order to make it work, you have to do it from outside the directory. That's the most nonsensical thing I've ever heard in my life. But I actually think it's on your cheat sheet that way already. Sure enough, well, no, it's not. But well, so yeah, that's odd. But yes, you can make Stratus work. So now our web interface should be up. So again, it's HTTPS, our local host, and then port 3004. You're gonna get secure connection failed. Why? Because the certificate was not generated by us, and it's expired, and a lot of other things. But this is on our local host. We trust it. Don't do this in real life. But for things like this, you can go ahead and say confirm exception. And the first time you go into Stratus, it will not look like this exactly. It will ask you to put in a password, because you set this up yourself, but this is something, if you're working on a team, you share it with each other, and your username actually isn't included in authentication. It's just so you don't have to add your name every time. If I'm working on a team, then I just put in my username as Georgia, and then everything I add people will know it came from me. So I put the password on here as password. You can set your password to whatever you want. Use better passwords than password in the real world. But so since mine's already set, I would just log in as Georgia and password. If you're setting it up for the first time, it's going to ask you to put in whatever password you want. It also says, please enable JavaScript support. Backtrack automatically has no script enabled. So just allow this page. And mine already has some stuff in it because I was testing it this morning, but yours should just not have this over here. But here we have here we have Stratus. Can you tell I'm a little bit flustered about the internet situation? And then we'll look at how to add some things a little later on. Well, we'll just add a branch here. I just say add branch, and I say this is a node. But we'll import some files as we get more information about the network. But right now, I just said some stuff. So back to my slides. So that's Stratus. There's plenty of other note-taking frameworks out there. Stratus is a pretty good one. It can be a little difficult to set up on other boxes if it's not already in Backtrack, because you have to have all the Ruby gems and such. But if you can get it working, it's fairly robust and easy to use. So databases. Metasploit hooks up to databases. Doesn't have its own. It hooks up through drivers with MySQL and Postgres. We're going to use MySQL, or I'm going to use MySQL. You can use Postgres if you want to. Really, the commands are all the same. You just, whenever it says MySQL, you say PostgreSQL instead. But we're just going to use MySQL. So the first thing you want to do is make sure your database is started. If you try and connect to a database that isn't started, it won't work, and it won't necessarily say that's why it didn't work. But so we start up our database normally, etc init.d MySQL start, and then from inside of metasploit, whenever you see MSF and then the greater than sign, that says we're inside the console, as we went through last week. And we just say db underscore driver and MySQL or PostgreSQL, and that will load our driver. And then we connect to our database with db underscore connect. Give it credentials. On Backtrack, your default credentials are the same as the operating system, root tour, and then I say at localhost, and then I said MSF3. You can name your database whatever you want. If it's not there already, it'll make it. So you can name it your name or whatever. And if you're done with the database, if you're on an engagement and you have to get rid of all your files about it after you're done, db destroy gets rid of all that. So let's do that. Again, this is all on your cheat sheet, which you all got. All right, we want, again, we're in our Backtrack box. We don't need Dratus right now, but we want to go into metasploit. So change directory to, once again, the pintest directory. Pintest exploits framework 3. And once I'm there, I'm going to start MSF console. And it loads up all those modules, and it makes its own custom little screen every time. So that will take a second while that starts. There we go. See the pretty ASCII art it made for me? And it says I need to update. So occasionally you want to update. Well, more than occasionally, but it'll warn you. It'll say it's been 9 days, you're not getting all the modules. Luckily, all the modules we're using for this class are not new, but you want to regularly update your Metasploit. And ways to do that, there's MSF update, and you can also just say svn update, but we'll look at that when we're outside of the console. Oh, okay, they want to get on the go-to meeting now. We got in 10 minutes late and they still weren't there. Okay, so I got a request if we could go to the go-to meeting again. So. It says I'm the only one in it.
Welcome to GoToMeeting, online meetings made easy. You are the first caller and will be placed on hold until the next caller arrives.
Who is it that says they want to get in it? Yeah, it's going to keep making that horrible noise. Hang on, oh, somebody just came in. Is that him? Stop it. No. Is that him that just got in? Do you know? Why is it making that terrible, terrible noise? It should not make that noise anymore, now that somebody else is in it. Yeah, I can't deal with that. If that noise just keeps going on, it's just gonna creep me out. I wanna see demos work. Oh, is that Grex? Grex. Who is I want to see demos work? Either chat your name or say it, because I have to know who would pick that sort of username. He's not going to say. Okay, well, there are people in the go-to meeting now. I got on it earlier and there wasn't anybody. So I'm showing my screen. We have audio. Should be good. Okay. Nothing will ever go right in this class. Okay. So sorry about that interruption. I got on the GoToMeeting earlier and it said no one was in it, and we were already late, so I just assumed no one wanted to join. But now we have 4 people in it, so yeah. So, for anybody who's just joined, all that we've done so far is we started Dratis, and let me just go over that real quickly. What we're doing today is we're doing vulnerability analysis, or vulnerability scanning. Why does it keep making that horrible noise? We're doing information gathering and vulnerability scanning. So all we've done so far is started up Dratis, which in order to do that, we want first our shell to work. We want to go to, I don't like it when things start acting slow. We want to go to pin test, miscellaneous, Dratis. I believe we decided we needed to stay just there. Oops, I didn't say CD. That's no good. And then, let's make sure we're in the right place. CD, yeah. So then we say, no, we want to go into server. And then we're going to go ahead and say Ruby, because this is a Ruby script we're running, not root. And then go into scripts with space, scripts, and then we want to say server. Whoa. That didn't work, and I don't know why. Yeah, so that's what you want to say. It's kind of probably good that I didn't get it to work, because I don't know what would happen if I tried to start 2 instances of Dratis at once, because I already have it running. So that's what you want to do to catch up with us. That's really all we've done. As you can see, we're a little behind. And then once we start up Dratis, we want to navigate in our web browser to HTTPS, localhost, and then port 3004. And that will show you the screen here. You are prompted to make your own password. So put it as anything you want. Your username is not used for authentication, so just give it your name. So it'll put all your notes with your name on it. Dratis is for note taking, and we're going to show more of Dratis in the class. And then you're caught up with us, because all we're doing right now is we're starting our database. So we started up metasploit console. Everybody with me now? Okay. So my MySQL is already started, but if you guys are not, again, it's etc initd, and then MySQL. These are all already built into Backtrack. MySQL start. It's going to tell me it's already started. Database is already running. If yours is not, it'll start it for you, and then we're ready to use it. So all we have to do now in order to use it is say db driver, db_driver, and then MySQL. Tells it which driver to use. That was easy. Now we want to connect to our database. So db_connect. And then our root and tour are our default credentials in Backtrack. It's probably best if you are ever actually using Backtrack outside of a class to change your credentials for root to not be tour, because then everybody knows that it's root tour. So, and then we need to tell it our local host. And then make up a name for your database. If it's not already there, it'll make it for you. If you use the same database in multiple sessions, you can grab one that's already there. And as long as your root tour password has access to it, then you can use it. I'm going to use MSF3 for my name. The one I made this morning was called test, so this should not grab an old one. Yep, everything went fine. It'll tell me if something goes wrong. So if it doesn't tell me, everything went fine. So not really anything in my database yet, so it's not very interesting. But as we do more things with our information gathering and vulnerability scanning, we'll add stuff to the database that we'll be able to use. So what's our database? The next thing, port scanning. We talked a little bit about ports. Those of you in the go-to meeting, we'll just go over it again. Basically, port scanning is going to query a host to see if there's a program listening at certain ports. Ports are not the back of the box like my old manager thought. They are instead just sockets on your computer to make it possible through networking for computers to talk to one another. Example, if you browse to a website, the web server on the IP out there where the website is listening on port 80 and it answers. So that's port 80 being open. And listening ports are accessible to an attacker. And if it has a vulnerability and it's listening on a port and I can access it from my box across the network, like if you have a vulnerability on one of your boxes right now, I'm able to access that if it's listening on a port. And if it's vulnerable, it could be used for exploitation. So that's what we want to find out with port scanning. We want to see what's open and what's listening out there. So if something's open, what program's on the other side? Example of that, last week we used MSO8067 Net API, Metasploit module. Everybody remember that? Yes? And that exploits the SMB service on port 445 on Windows. So as we go through this, we'll actually see that port listening and do vulnerability scanning for it that will tell us that MSO8067 Net API is a good exploit to use, but we just knew that last week. But if we were in an actual engagement, this would be how we would find out that we needed to use that exploit. One example of a port scanner is Nmap. Nmap does a lot of things. It doesn't just port scan, it seems to do just about everything under the sun. I'm not going to be able to cover everything about Nmap here. We might do a class at some point about Nmap. It has so many interesting things, but I have the website for documentation, and you can just go to the man page and get a lot of your options. We're just going to do one specific example of an Nmap scan, but definitely if this seems interesting to you, learn more about Nmap. You can do lots of things with it. But the example we're going to do, we're going to run an Nmap scan. It's a TCP version scan, and so that's our negative SV. It's going to just tell it to do a TCP version scan. If you look at your man page, that'll tell you that that's what you tell it for that. There's all sorts of scans, unicorn scan, Christmas scan, connect scans, idle scans, but we're just going to do this particular one. And what it's going to do is do a TCP connection and try and find the version of what's listening on the other side. And then it says to do the whole range to scan 192.168.1.x, x being anything between 1 and or 0 and 254. In that case, it would run the whole scan against that whole subnet. We don't actually need to do that here because you know your IP addresses of your two victims, your Metasploitable box and your Windows XP box. Go in and for Windows ask ipconfig, and for Linux, for your Metasploitable, your credentials are MSF admin, and then for Windows it's administrator and password. So just go ahead and find out what your IP address is and then specifically tell it to scan those two boxes and it'll be faster. And then -0A just tells it to output in all formats. It does Nmap, greppable Nmap, and XML. And then where it says subnet 1 here, that's just a name for it. I called it subnet 1. You can call it whatever you want. Again, wildcard as long as you remember it. So then after we do that, we're going to import it into our database and to Stratus. And again, all of this is on your cheat sheet. But let's run through that together. Not Windows. Backtrack. So we're back in Backtrack. We can do this inside of the framework, but let's not, just because we don't have to. So we're just anywhere. I'm in my root directory. It's good to remember where it is. If you're going to import it, you're going to have to find it again. So I just say nmap, and then again -S capital V for our TCP version scan. Tell it our IPs. I have my IP addresses somewhere. Here we go. So our two victims are Windows XP Service Pack 2 and our Metasploitable VM, which you should all have. Does anybody not have their VMs?
I don't have Metasploitable. All we got last time was
Okay. Well, just go ahead and do your XP, and I'll get it to you at the end of class. Because both of these are a vulnerable system. So I know my IP addresses. And then, so I just add those two in. So what you have there for the IP addresses will be different. That doesn't need a space. It'll be dependent on what your own IP addresses are. Was everybody able to get their IP addresses to find them? Yes, okay. Guess I should be asking, is anyone not? Because then I'll know more about the silence that I get. And then -0, capital A, again, that's output all. So we'll have files. If we don't tell it to output to a file, it'll just output to a screen, which is fine. But since we want to import it into our databases and Dratus, it's just easier. And I'll call it subnet 1 because that's what I said I was going to call it. So then I send that off. What? Square brackets. I don't see any square brackets in there. Okay, I did need that space. That's the only problem. Space between our two hosts. Usually you would have a range, so that wouldn't actually come up, but I want to make this as quick as possible and tell it just to grab those two. If you're on a company network, you'd probably just tell it to scan the entire range that's out there. So that's going to run for a minute. Shouldn't take it too long. So everybody got in-map scanning against their two. There we go. See? It talks about all the open ports here on my two boxes. And wherever it was possible, it says what's running. And in some cases, this